Welcome to our fourth panel of our conference, which is titled Green Hydrogen and Water Justice. I'm Alexandra Tost. I work at the Research Institute for Sustainability. I am going to give a little introduction to our panel. So first, I would like to ask you, who of you likes avocados? Well, you might wonder right now, what is the relation to water justice and green hydrogen when I speak about avocados? So let me tell you a story from Chile. In the Petorca Valley, which is close to the capital Santiago, 20% of the local population opens their water tap at home, and there is nothing which comes from the water grid. Their water is served in small portions by cistern trucks. This is a dramatic example of the mega drought that affects Chile since 2010, which is associated to the climate crisis. And this valley is also part of the area affected by the most severe and deadliest wildfires of Chile's history that were in the news some weeks ago. But what do you think when I tell you that this region is one of the main avocado producers, considering that avocados are a tropical fruit with high water demands? Next to the households without water are thriving green hills with tropical plants. That's when we start speaking about distributional justice. Who gets the scarce resource in a country where water has been turned into a commodity since the 1980s? So when we speak about green hydrogen and water justice, of course, we need to speak about technical issues. How high is the water demand, and is it covered by the available water without negative impact on the local water supply? If there's a gap, we need to ask what are possible technological infrastructure for water supply, such as desalination plants, assess its ecological impact and the possibility and costs of measures to remediate that impact. And this is important to stress because it is more than just abundant wind and sun that determines the ideal location for a green hydrogen plant, as we have also mentioned in the panel before, in panel 3 of this conference. But since the implementation of green hydrogen mega projects still lies in the future, there is the risk to hold the debate on an overly theoretical level, sometimes referring to people being scared because of their negative experiences with existing extractive industries. But it's right there where we need to stay and focus on matters of political economy and political ecology. So I suggest adding some questions with a justice-centered approach. Who decides about the distribution of water and how? In a future green hydrogen project, but also in the present. For example, the people of Petorca certainly are not the ones who take those decisions. What are the structural reasons for people, such as the families in Petorca, suffering from water scarcity, and will they persist? This is where we need to think about worst and best case scenarios for future hydrogen production, but also put this into the context of the current situation. The avocados from Petorca are being exported to the European Union. By the way, the European Union, where a law on due diligence in supply chains has just been put on hold by a German minister. So if you like avocados, or if you are involved in the discussions around setting up a global hydrogen market, it is great that you are here to discuss green hydrogen and water justice with our panel that I'm going to present now. So first of all, I would like to present to you Daniel Frank. He's a senior advisor for water management and the coordinator of the Green H2 Namibia project at DECHEMA, which is the German Society for Chemical Engineering and Biotechnology. And Daniel Frank will give us an overview of green hydrogen from a water management perspective, I would say. So I'm very much looking forward to your points. Next, I would like to present you Cristina Dorador. She's a professor at the Department of Biotechnology at the University of Antofagasta in northern Chile. She's a member of the Green Hydrogen Action Plan Strategic Committee of the Chilean government and a water justice activist with Modatima, the movement for the defense of access to water, land, and environmental protection, which was originally founded in the Petorca Valley, which I have just mentioned in my introduction. And also in the year 2022, she was an elected member of the convention that elaborated a draft for a new constitution of Chile. The next person I would like to present to you is Schröer. He's an engineer in physics. And from 2014 to 2022, he was responsible for the GIZ Energy Program cluster in Chile with activities in green hydrogen. And starting with this already 10 years ago, he was amongst the pioneers in Chile to work on hydrogen projects there. And since last year, he's the director and co-founder of the Solar Ammonia Chile project, which he will explain to us in more detail in his presentation. And the next one is Romain Mauger. I hope I pronounced it right. He is the head of legal research unit at the Iberian Center for Research in Energy Storage, located in Cáceres in Spain. He has close to 15 years of experience in the energy sector, first as a practitioner in the wind energy sector, and then as an energy law academic. His research interests cover the legal regime for new energy technologies for the decarbonization, energy justice, and degrowth. And he will talk about the EU sustainability criteria for green hydrogen with a focus on water today. So now I would like to present you briefly the structure of the session. So we will start with inputs by our guests. There you have the possibility to post direct questions for the context of understanding of the panel by the audience or also from the panel. And then we switch to a podium discussion, which is thought as a dialogue between the panelists. And afterwards, there will be a Q&A with the audience where you can post questions either in the chat or directly by activating your microphone and camera on demand. So when we pick you, so that would be a nice interaction with you. And yeah, thank you also for your interest in connecting today. It's wonderful to see so many people connected on a Friday afternoon. And yeah, I would like to give the floor directly to Daniel Frank to start with the first presentation. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much also for the brief introduction and for having me. Good afternoon or good morning to our colleagues from the Americas joining this panel. You should see the presentation mode right now. Perfect. I got roughly 7 minutes, right? Great. So you asked for a technical presentation about water management, and you will get a technical presentation. So my background is chemical engineer, and I'm coordinator of the Green H2 Namibia feasibility study, which started in the end of 2022, and it will run roughly until summer 2025. And Namibia will be an example how the general water discussion is going on about green hydrogen production worldwide, because when it comes to green hydrogen production, it always starts with desalination. So the Namibian government established in 2022 a strategy where green hydrogen could be produced. This is an old map, but by now they reduced that to 3 dedicated valleys, so-called valleys in Namibia, where they want to produce green hydrogen, and they also want to adapt to green industrialization, because they already figured out that everything goes to export, they still need some valorization within their country, and therefore also trying to exploit green iron, green steel, and others possibilities to have a green industry by 2050. So these are some examples of the projects already running on pilot level, and the Hyphen project, of course, you know, is one of the largest in the Southern Hemisphere for the production of green hydrogen. They're at the moment looking for financiers. So if you're interested to invest, please proceed accordingly. And probably I will add something in the discussion why it's so important that we have the Hyphen project, regardless where it's situated in Namibia. So when it comes to the water sector, we have 3 questions we need to answer or to address. How much water will be needed for the production of hydrogen? How do we get this water, and where do we get this water from? And if any, which impact is generated by that? As said, Namibia will set on this example. So we calculated the forecast, giving numbers from the government, and having 3 scenarios where we put down numbers from the green hydrogen strategy. And I just don't want to bore you with all the numbers, just going to estimation scenarios 3, which is 12 million tons of hydrogen production annually, which is the total amount by the strategy laid out by 2050. And then 16% additional water demand will be needed for the green hydrogen production. This doesn't seem a lot, since still more than 50% goes to irrigation or to agriculture. But Namibia is a very dry country, one of the driest countries in the southern hemisphere, and especially in southern Africa. So therefore, this water cannot come from groundwater aquifers, but it needs to be coming from somewhere else. And there we talk about desalination. So when it comes to desalination, we have two routes. The one is the thermal route via distillation, and then we also have the possibility to run via membrane solutions. If we want to use this water as potable water for drinking purposes, we have a remineralization step. If we want to use it for green hydrogen production, we need a conductivity below 1 or 0.1 microsiemens per centimeter. This is just a rough estimation of how pure this water should be. And when it comes to numbers, we have 1 kilogram of hydrogen and 9 kilograms oxygen coming roughly from 10 kilograms of water, of ultra pure water. But depending on the intake water, we need 20 to 30 kilograms of seawater to produce then 1 kilogram of hydrogen, and the rest is effluent as brine, which is then pumped back into the sea or further valorized. And when it comes to water desalination, some people just said, yeah, well, that's one plant and one technology you need to build up. But actually, it's like 20 to 30 different treatment steps for have water in that purification value range you need for having a green hydrogen production. So it's not only one plant, but it's several steps, and all these steps needs maintenance, and they need trained people to work on these plants as well. So basically, and that's already my conclusion, probably I'm way beyond my time or before, but three things forming the three questions I had in the beginning. Definitely the water demand will rise with an emerging green hydrogen industry, and that's also relevant for global level. And we can say groundwater will not be able to cover the demand. And when we're also speaking about a global level, without seawater desalination, we will not be able to feed the world population, an ever-increasing world population. We won't have enough water for industry or especially for the green hydrogen production. What do we do with the brine? At the moment, it's discharged back into the ocean. We need to monitor that, or that's at least something what we recommend to monitor. And then we have probably regional impacts, which need also be monitoring and further treatment of the brine. And that could be done to reduce environmental impacts. And also there might be a potential markets for salts or other minerals we can recover from the brine. There was once a Hollywood movie called The Triangle of Sadness. I will call that the Triangle of Hope. We have the three branches of hydrogen, municipalities, and industry. But to meet the demands for water and also for energy within this triangle, we need a lot of communication. And that's most of the cases missing when it comes to negotiations on land use and other issues related to green hydrogen production. So my final say in this matter is without communication, no technical development will happen, and especially when it comes to water demand, which will be used for three different branches. And with that, I'd like to conclude and just make some final advertisement. Please use this QR code to see our study for Water for X for green hydrogen production. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward for the other inputs.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I would pass on directly to Cristina Dorador. Yeah, thank you. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Well, thank you so much, Alexandra, for the invitation to give this talk. Sorry about the noise. I don't know if you heard something. I'm in a public place. Well, I would like to tell you today about my participation in this strategic committee that created the Ministry of Energy of Chile during 2023. It was formed by 10 persons, including the former president, Michelle Bachelet, and some other former minister of energy, and also other people. That's very important in the area of politics, and as well the governors of the two main regions where in Chile is planned to produce this industry of green hydrogen. For example, Antofagasta and Magallanes. So before I want to mention, following the example that Alexandra gave about avocado, many of the exportation of Chile, of course, needs water, including mining. To obtain copper, Chile, you know, is one of the main producers of copper, needs a lot of water. The same lithium, and in the past was nitrate, sulfate, and in the future also will be the green hydrogen. And we are talking about most of this mining industry happening in the north of Chile, that is the Atacama Desert, the most arid place on earth. So we are really stressing the places to obtain these products that are very important for the world economies, but the environmental costs have been very, very high. So one of the main concerns of local communities is what happened with this new industry like green hydrogen. They will do exactly the same that happened in the past with copper, with nitrate, and now currently with lithium. So it's a very complex issue that have to be, I think, treated very openly and including different visions. And that was the idea of this strategic committee. We were a very diverse group, very plural, and we planned 5 different green big ideas or images concerning, for example, the environmental part, also the international, how will be, you know, Chile will be connect with other economies, also economical, also how will impact the production of knowledge in Chile regarding green hydrogen, including the formation of new student or careers, and also the technological development. And as well, I think one of the most important areas is the participation of the citizenship and the communities. Because this increasing industry in the country, you know, is planned to be a very large scale industry, but as well, the communities, they really are demanding more participation, especially the people in Magallanes. They are organized and they have present different letters, putting all their concern, especially at the environmental level, because in Magallanes, a difference than Antofagasta is an industrial place. You know, we have, like Mejillones, for example, is the largest port for copper mining and now lithium. So there is this infrastructure to develop a prospective green hydrogen industry. But in Magallanes, there is nothing yet. I mean, it's planning to build a new port, you know, all this energy also production, especially eolic. So they're very, very different situations. And personally, I think we need to be a little bit slower because so many things that we haven't solved yet. For example, the environmental regulations. In one of this document that we produced, we pointed out that Chile have to follow the highest environmental regulation as possible, following, for example, European Union ones. But we need a lot of time also to implement that in the country, to do the research about it, and also try to solve the main question of this seminar, you know. What happened with this system, with this model? Who will be benefits? The community directly, or in this case, the country that wants to buy the hydrogen, or at local level? So it's still, I think, kind of complicated to abroad that's problematic. And also at the end, I want to finish saying that there is a very, very, very important idea here, especially in these territories like Antofagasta and Magallanes, that this is part of this green extractivism. I mean, because it's so clear, the demands, especially not only the hydrogen now, it's also lithium. They're coming from the northern hemisphere. And that produces a very high local stress, not only in the governments, also in the local communities, because the companies start to negotiate directly with the communities. So it's something that we have to also take in account that is happening now. And finally, also want to mention about the desalination plants, because we are in the desert. And as I mentioned before, we have a very high demand of water for industry. Of course, we also have, we are living now a massive production of new desalination plants, but we don't have regulations about it. We just build building this regulation. So the local impacts can be very high, especially on biodiversity, have been reported already, and probably also for local climate changes. So there's so many issues to solve that still I think we don't have, of course, a one solution. It's very complex panorama, but that's why it's important to discuss about it. So that I wanted to say by now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe just one direct question back to you, Cristina. Is the regulation about the desalination plants? Can you share with us, like, what's the status of that? Like, you're saying this is only being developed now. Do you have more information on how the situation is?
In the Chilean system, if we don't have a local regulation, it's accepted that we can use ones that are used in different countries as a reference. So some of the countries, of course, in Europe, the European Union has regulations, so they're based on that. But we need a specific one, a local one, because it's not the same to evaluate the impacts in the Pacific Oceans than in the Mediterranean or the Atlantic Ocean. So of course we need, and for that we need more science. That is something I didn't mention in detail, but Chile really needs to improve the investment in scientific knowledge, especially at local level, I mean regional level, and also with very specific issues, like in this case, green hydrogen, desalination plant, and other areas that are really now complicated and produce a lot of concerns in the population.
Thank you very much. So next we have Rainer Schröer. So I guess you can tell us from a different perspective about the situation in Chile. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you see my slide?
Yes, it's not in presentation mode yet.
Oh, yes, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Rainer Schröer. I'm representing Solar Ammonia Chile. It's a project which we are going to develop in the north of Chile. Some facts about our projects. Misiones is the place where we like to develop our project in the region of Antofagasta in the north of Chile. And we're planning to produce 1,000 tons of ammonia per day, most for export reasons. And our power supply is photovoltaics installed in the Atacama Desert. We have our own power line and battery systems also, so we can assure 100% renewable energy supply. And we are embedded in an industrial park infrastructure, which I will come to it later. This is a picture of our project. The production of green hydrogen and green ammonia is taking place in Misiones, and our generation site is about 80 kilometers in the mountains of the Atacama Desert. Why we choose the north of Chile? Because we have the best solar radiation available worldwide, with full load hours about 3,200, and with the battery storage and other storage systems we can use reach up to 8,000 full hour load hours. We have sufficient land available. We have local demand, also from the mining industry. We have industrial culture. We have skilled labor market. It's very important. We have very good local infrastructure with ports, with railroads, with roads, with gas pipelines, and we can develop integrated projects. I will explain it a bit later what it is. Why north of Chile? Here you see in the north of Chile is really the best solar resource on Earth. And we have, the Ministry of Energy and together with CIIAE have calculated in 2014 the potential of renewable energy in Chile. And we came up to the conclusion that we can generate about 5,000 terawatt hours per year. Comparing to the energy demand, electric energy demand is about 80 terawatt hours. We have a lot of space, a lot of energy available produce green hydrogen or other things, and that doesn't hamper the energy transition of the country. This is a very important point. Integrated projects is what we like to do. Integrated is that we are producing with renewable energies, we are doing the water desalination, and the water is used for the electrolysis, for our project, for the production of green hydrogen, but also for the mining industry, also for the human consumption and for the industry, and probably also for the agricultural purpose. This is, we call, an integrated approach of water. Water is an essential element in this. And that's why we are following an industrial park configuration, where our project is one of several projects integrated in an industrial park, and we have the infrastructure we can share, like the port infrastructure, the water supply infrastructure, and the energy infrastructure. This gives a quite advantage. You can see the industrial park, where our project is one of them. And we have the land availability, we have the access to the port, we have the cargo and shipping infrastructure, we have rail and road access, we have shared storage of hydrogen and green ammonia, and we have a sufficient space to also to place equipment provider and service companies inside this park, and we have the common desalination of water supply. To the water situation in Antofagasta or in Chile, Chile is vulnerable to the water crisis. The World Resource Institute has stated that you can expect extreme water stress in Chile by 2040. The north of Chile, as we heard already, is most affected by it. And you have in this moment a very dynamic expansion of seawater desalination with the mining sector as the driver. We have in this moment about 22 plants in operation with a capacity of 8,200 liters per second. 75% is from the mining industry. The mining is expected to have a desalination capacity of more than 25,000 liters per second by 2028 or 2030. So it's quite a huge development in water desalination in Chile. Water desalination is not new in the region. As you see here, we have a plant which was installed in 1872 with a 15 liter per second capacity. It's a solar distill. It was in this time made for the salpeter industry, and this you can only see ruins now, but it's a very interesting project. This is what it was some years ago. Now we have in Chile, roughly in operation about 8,500 liters per second, expected to have in a few years about 40,000 liters per second. And this is an increase about more than 500%. It's a huge, a very dynamic development. If you look at the plants, the desalination plants in Chile operating or in construction, you see you get a capacity of almost 18,000 liters per second. It's quite a lot. And in the Michelones, in the side where we are constructing our plant, you have Michelones is depending on desalinated water. 100% of the 15,000 inhabitants are depending on a desalination plant in Antofagasta. You have a big plant for the mining with 1,000 liters per second. You have smaller plants for coal-fired power plants and a small industrial plant. And if you compare now our consumption is only about 20 liters per second. With the other ones, it's only 10% of the spent mine, for instance, or 0.08% of the expected capacity of the mining project in Chile. It's very, very small demand which we need. This is one project. If you're looking about 10 projects, you have 10 times more, but it's still far away from the demand of the mining sector. Important for us as a project developer of a green hydrogen project is sustainability. So we have to look forward that the water desalination is run by renewable energies. So far, there are only few projects in Chile running by renewable energies or PPAs from renewable energies. And the treatment of the brine is very important. It has to be sustainable. And you probably can recover some elements and appropriate return to the sea. To conclude, the conclusion, the north of Chile has ideal conditions for green hydrogen projects. You have an existing infrastructure. You can develop integrated projects. You have a very dynamic increase in the desalination in Chile, and the water demand for hydrogen projects is relatively small compared to the demand of the mining industry. For our project and for all hydrogen projects, the sustainability of the water supply is essential, and renewable power and treatment of brine are the most important aspects in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before we pass on to the discussion, I would invite now Romain to share your presentation.
Yes. Here we are. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation to the organizers and for the introduction at the start. So Rainer just finished his presentation talking about sustainability. That's a perfect link to my own presentation, where I will be talking about the sustainability criteria for hydrogen production and imports to the EU. Because indeed, when we talk about sustainability, we think about the three pillars with this economic development, with environmental aspects, and with social aspects as well to be taken into account. So that's what we would actually expect from such kind of sustainability criteria. But let's take a bit of a dive into these to see if really we can talk about sustainability, and if really, in the case of the European Union, it will apply adequately to hydrogen production. So just as a kind of disclaimer, the content comes from a book chapter which I covered with two other authors, and which will be published soon. So the context, as we know, we have massive renewable hydrogen import plans to the EU, and now we have actually a legal framework that has been adopted over the course of the last year. The main aspect I wanted to point out to here is that the Article 8.1 of the revised gas directive, which was agreed just at the end of last year, requires renewable gases to be certified in accordance to Articles 29 and 30 of the RED III. So what does this mean? When we talk about renewable gases, it means biogas, as well as renewable gaseous fuels, part of fuels of non-biological origins, or RFNBOs. And these RFNBOs are liquid and gaseous fuels from renewable sources other than biomass. This is where we find actually renewable hydrogen. And Article 29 and 30 of RED III are basically the articles that are focusing on the sustainability criteria for bioenergy. They already exist since 2009. So with these articles, with these two directives, we know that indeed green hydrogen or renewable hydrogen production is to respect these sustainability criteria. So what is the regime actually of the sustainability criteria for bioenergy? The sustainability criteria, they focus mostly on two aspects. One is GHG emission savings, and the other one is actually deforestation. So it focuses on carbon, as I've said, and on biodiversity to an extent, because the reducing deforestation also allows to actually reduce loss of biodiversity and you have some specific type of land that are being protected, such as natural protected areas. However, we also have other aspects which are mentioned into the directive, such as the impact on food availability, social sustainability, land use rights, information about the soil, water, air protection, and especially, which is very interesting in our case, the evidence of excessive water consumption in areas where water is scarce. However, in these cases, it's only a reporting obligation. It is not the same level of obligation as for the aspects on GHG emission savings and deforestation. If the sustainability criteria are not met, it's important to know that the bioenergy can still enter and be sold in the EU market, but it cannot receive any financial support, nor count towards the RES targets of the EU member states, which is a legal obligation. So indeed, it is not incentivized in this case. And in addition, the last point in this with the regime, the compliance with the sustainability criteria must be proven by the bioenergy producers through independent audits, which mainly amounts to private voluntary certification schemes. Now, based on this regime, what is the experience that we actually have seen over the more than 10 years of rollout of these different sustainability criteria for bioenergy? Well, we have two main issues which I will touch upon here. The first one, which is about the focus on GHG emission and deforestation, which means, as I've touched upon a bit, that other environmental issues are under scrutinized and social rights as well are under scrutinized. So talking, for example, about the right to the land rights of indigenous people or the working conditions of the workers. The second issue is that it actually created a forum shopping between private certification schemes. Basically, if you're a producer of bioenergy, you will go towards the scheme which is the less ambitious because you have less obligations to comply with. So it kind of levels everything towards a down or a lower level of obligations. We also have fraudulent classification with higher standards being claimed for a product, while actually a basic standard is being applied. You have a very interesting paper on this about the Argentinian biodiesel sector if you want to have a look at. And to face actually these issues and to prevent them in the past, we had some attempts to include broader sustainability criteria, so especially with social aspects, but there was a fear from the World Trade Organization's regime and of long court procedures. But especially the Parliament, the EU Parliament tried to engage into this kind of reinforcement of these different or strengthening of the sustainability criteria, but the European Commission didn't want to go down this road. So it's difficult to see it evolving further in the future. And actually, it's been now quite a few years that it hasn't evolved further, the sustainability criteria, at least not in terms of this broadening and strengthening. Now, if we want to apply it to renewable hydrogen, would it actually fit? Because that's really the main question here that we have, because we have seen that to save a bit of time and also to try to apply a system that kind of work, although I've mentioned that there are quite some issues, then the European Union just decided to apply this existing criteria to renewable hydrogen, but it's not the same topic we're talking about. It's not the same impacts. So, okay, we have the GHG aspects. Okay, no problem, we take it. We also have the deforestation and nature protected areas more generally, which is included. Yeah, why not? We will also take it if we can have some limits to have renewable H2 considered as sustainable for the import into the EU. We will also appreciate this. However, about the main impacts, which is what we have been talking about since yesterday and during this panel, which is about the consumption of electricity and, of course, the consumption of water, especially in water scarce areas, then we have a bit of an issue in terms of the efficiency and adaptability of the sustainability criteria. Because as we know, the renewable H2 hotspots are often in water scarce areas. Northern Chile, as we talked now about, Namibia as well, Morocco, Spain, Australia, etc. So we already have existing conflicts of use of this water, and this will be worsened, certainly. We have been talking about copper and lithium mining in Chile. Southern Spain as well also has quite some conflicts around the use of water with the intensive farming currently. Also, desalination has been mentioned, and it was stressed that it's not a perfect solution in terms of the treatment of the brine that remains to be really implemented at large scale. And also the sustainability criteria was not crafted for the seas. It was crafted for forests. So how can you actually be sure that this will be implemented and potentially impacting the whole production scale, the whole value chain of the production of green hydrogen? Well, it's quite unsure actually. Social rights as well, indigenous people's rights are not guaranteed by the sustainability criteria, which is an issue. And overall, this leaves us with more questions than certainty when we're talking about these sustainability criteria and whether they will really help. What about justice? Who will be burdened? Which kind of local populations, for example, or the environment? What about traditional water uses in all these regions, and so on, but I keep them for some further debate. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. So I guess we got a quite broad overview of different issues that are relevant, looking from certain local perspectives and also more technical and from the governance area. So now I would like to just give you the chance again in the same order that we started to make some comments on the other presentations that you heard from your perspective. So I would like to invite Daniel Frank first to this round of comments.
Yes, thank you very much, and also for the valuable inputs from different angles on the hydrogen value chain. I'd like to start directly with a question to Cristina. Thank you very much for raising the Chilean cause about water consumption and hydrogen production. But you mentioned we need to be slower. I heard from some stakeholders, especially in Namibia, that instead of being slower, we need to be faster to be the front runner in green hydrogen production, to be the first country to be exporting, to actually have our space in the world economy of green hydrogen. Do you see that somehow critical when it comes to regulations? What is the right time for investing in green hydrogen and building up the plants? Is there a right time, or how would you refer to that when it comes to your statement of saying being slower?
We have a large experience to be very fast on things, and the results have been very, very good sometimes. Because at least in our environmental destruction, it's based on mitigation. So when the projects are proposed and then evaluate, the companies have to, or the industry, they have to, to say what will be the possible impacts and effects in the different categories. And if something happening, then there is an action about it. But usually that's happening when the damage is already done and it's irreversible. So when I say slow, means to be sure that what we're doing is good for everyone. It's good for environments, good for the population, for the communities. There is a lot of pressure, also I mentioned that, from the industry, companies, also different states to be very fast and urgent. But that cannot be at the cost of local environment and communities that, as are happening before in Chile for so many decades. So it's just to learn what's happening before. And also one point, usually there green hydrogen and lithium as well, because they happen in the same territory. In the case of Antofagasta, it's justified by reduce the decarbonization. But this narrative didn't include the local effects and the local effects on climate change as well. So sometimes also we need to, I think, be more open and to include the local narrative as well. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe just to intervene briefly. I guess Chile, for example, is one of the examples that when we follow the mitigation debate, the climate change mitigation debate from decades on, there was always this warning that we come into a situation where adaptation and the effects of climate change make the mitigation almost more complicated. So there's like this multi-disaster situation where you have different pressures from different spheres, and you have to try to bring them together. Yes, so Daniel Frank, so you had your microphone open, so I guess you still wanted to add more comments, so you're welcome to do so.
Yeah, I'm still not done, sorry. But thank you very much, Cristina, for that. And I think that's a valuable statement saying, okay, companies need to act responsible and to incorporate also local opinions and local needs when it comes to sustainability production. And of course, the mining sector in Namibia, I mean, the economy in Namibia is smaller than the one in Chile, but the mining sector as well is increasing. The water demand is increasing, the land use is increasing, and they're also acting on a different speed than the green hydrogen development is, because there are different aspects of money involved. And I think that's something what needs to be discussed in the overall perspective of water management. Because when you build a desalination plant, it doesn't make sense when you build a desalination plant just for the municipalities or just for the hydrogen production. There needs to be one dedicated plant that feeds all the different off-takers. And I think they need to find ways to actually maintain and to operate the desalination plant in a sustainable way, that the benefits are shared, but also the costs related to water production, and especially safe water production, because I think otherwise we don't have levelized costs when it comes to water. And that's a general problem, that we don't have a cost for water in people's mind, that they're still considering, okay, we open a tap, water comes out, and we pay probably some wastewater fees, but not especially the whole value chain which needs to come into operation when it comes to desalination plants. Because it's several regions in the world at the moment, there's still water coming from groundwater or from rivers, and that's not the same cost amount when it comes from a desalination plant, because this is more expensive. And this is something what cannot be put also on people which already have nothing, when you put additional water costs on their shoulders. And I think this is something what needs to be discussed when it comes to green hydrogen production as well, that it needs to be sustainable, straightforward into the future, that the water issue wouldn't be an issue. And I think that also comes, addressing Romain's presentation, to some categories we need for water as well. Everybody's talking about criteria for green energy production, but when it comes to water, nobody's talking about sustainability criteria for that. And I think that's a shame.
Okay, so next in line would be Cristina, if you have particular comments or questions that you would like to address to the other panelists.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment or question to Rainer. It's about Mejillones, because Mejillones is a place that is considered as a sacrifice zone, because many industries are located there. So what are the plans of these projects to include the communities, also to try to also improve, I don't know if it's possible, the local quality of life, and changing this idea these territories are so degraded as well. Now, how will we deal with that?
Yeah, maybe just before in between, I would like to explain maybe what a sacrifice zone is, because I think that's a term that's that has been coined, as far as I know, in Chile, and maybe not everyone is familiar with this. So actually, the origins are, as far as I know, like in the 1960s, where there was very little to no environmental legislation. So industries were concentrated in certain areas that were the term has come from the protest against this, basically sacrificed, saying, okay, this is an area where we concentrate carbon power plants or mining, and the environment or the community, it's a different situation than, for example, interventions close to more urban centers. So that's where the term sacrifice zones come from. So yeah, I'm interested to hear, Rainer, what's your answer to that?
Mejillones is called a sacrifice zone because they have a lot of coal-fired power plants there, about 6, I think, or 5 or 6. So it's a concentration of coal-fired power plants, all for mainly for the mining industry. Also, you have mining operations. You have a lot of mining, shipping, and whatsoever. This is a port. It's an industrial zone. I wouldn't call it a sacrifice. It's quite a strong word, I guess. But as a matter of fact, you have the coal-fired power plants, which are the most polluter in the zone. And there's in Chile, there's energy transition ongoing, and this coal-fired power plants will be shut down. So what can you do? We have, when I worked in this CIIAE, we were working in reconverting one of the power plants into an energy storage plant powered by solar energy and wind energy. For instance, you can also convert these power plants in water desalination plants. You can use something you can make use of the infrastructure you have, existing infrastructure you have. To give you an idea, one of the power plants have their own water desalination plants. It's 52 liters per second. Our production needs only 20. So if the coal-fired power plant will be shut down, you have a lot of water available still to give to the hydrogen production. I would say that the green hydrogen production, it's a clean process, relatively speaking, clean process. Comparing to the coal-fired power plants and the mining industry and the chemical industry, which is already installed there. Of course, you can shut down everything. I don't know if you like this one. I think, and you have to talk to the communities. Of course, you have to talk to the municipalities, to the people who are living there. And I think, if you're creating job in a new industry, which is much far more cleaner than the existing one, I think is an alternative. What do you do with the people if all the 7 power plants are going to be shut down? They have no work there. So this is also a problem of social acceptance. What shall the people do? So you have to build some industry there. And I think, in my opinion, as I know the region very well, it's one of the best alternatives there. And another thing, you cannot compare the north of Chile with the south of Chile. As you mentioned, Cristina, in the south of Chile, in Magallanes region, you have a totally different situation, where you have to build all the infrastructure from zero. You have to build towns. You have to do everything. This is not the case in the north. In the north, you have the infrastructure. You have gas pipelines. You have ports. You have roads. You have railways. You have the industry. You have the skilled workers. You have everything. You have the water. I think these are very exceptional conditions. In other countries, you have to do everything. And everything what you do has an impact, of course. Mining has a big impact, but another way, you need copper. If you don't have copper, you cannot build windmills. So if you're calling for electromobility, you need some lithium. Something is, so you have always to find a compromise. That's what you're trying. I think Chile has a chance to build up an industry which is relatively clean. I guess I would say so. It's a great chance, and I would be in my point of view a pity if Chile will slow down the process which already has been started some years ago, and to give other countries the lead which Chile had before in this development.
Is there any direct reaction? Because otherwise I would have a brief question. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Romain, for your answer. I'm from Mejillones originally. I lived there until I was 8 years old. My family lived there. So I know the place very well. That's why my question. Because at the time, of course, nobody asked the people what they want, how they want to develop their own community, you know? They start to build, as you mentioned, these power plants based on carbon, very dirty ones, the port, sulfuric plant, acid sulfuric plant for copper mining, etc., etc. So if you present a new project based on green hydrogen, people maybe will not differentiate really what is for. Because also at the beginning, they told the local community that they will be the workers of this company. That never happens. Actually, most of the people working in the mining industry, that's something that we include in our proposal in the strategic committee, that local workers have to belong to the communities, because that doesn't happen now in Miquellones, at least. So the people coming from other part of the country work there and coming back to their houses. So they basically leave anything there. They just use it as a place to be explored. That's also the name of sacrificial zone. I know the word is very strong. I don't like it, because nobody would like to live in a place called, to live in a sacrifice area. But it is very graphical to show that there are places destinated, have this destiny to be explored at a very high cost. So we need to learn. That's my message. We need to learn from the past experiences and to be prepared what will happen. Nothing is black or white. Have many contrasts. So, but it's very important also to learn from other industry what is there, having the impact in the local territories. Thank you.
So I would like to ask one question to the group. I think particularly to Daniel, Cristina, and Rainer. This scale up of the desalination plants that Rainer has described of 480%. Are you worried about that? Like maybe also from Daniel, you don't know the context of Chile in so much detail. But what is your impression there? Would you say, okay, maybe there is already a lot of desalination going on, apparently it's working, or maybe the repurposing of the water use, but still there is this growth in the desalination. So what is your impression on that?
I mean, desalination is no rocket science. Desalination plants are operating worldwide 24/7. The largest plant was just started to operating 2 years ago in Saudi Arabia, and the effects there are already to be seen. So there is a reduced flora and fauna in the Persian Gulf, but this is an inland sea, and when it comes to the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean, we have to consider whether there are any impact factors or not coming from the brine. But I would say that without desalination, we will have not only a problem for the green hydrogen industry, but also for safe water provision for drinking water purposes and for industry as well. So I think we cannot shut down desalination plants. We need more desalination plants on a global level in various capacity ranges. And we need to train people to work on desalination plants, because this is a crucial thing. We cannot only start saying, okay, we built a desalination plant in certain countries and then everything is fine. We need to train people to actually work for and with desalination plants, not only for a week or for 1 year, but for decades. Because without properly trained people, and that also is relevant for the green hydrogen industry as well, for maintaining windmills or solar panels, the whole defossilization on a global scale would not happen.
Yeah.
I would say I was trying to show you with my numbers that there's a very dynamic increase of water desalination in Chile. They are building, and this has to be done because water will be a huge problem of Chile, and all the countries on the left-hand side of the Andes, because of the climate change. There's each year less water coming from the mountains, and the melting of the glacier, and so you will have a problem. In the north, you had ever since you had a problem, but also in the south of Chile and in the center of Chile, you will have the problem. So water desalination is coming up. There's a very dynamic process. And I always was asking, okay, I think water desalination not is a problem. It's not a problem. It has some aspect which is, from my opinion, quite critical, which is the brine. The brine, if you put it back to the sea, in Chile is not so critical because they have a very deep sea, and you can put it quite. It's not so, in fact, not so big like in the Mediterranean. However, I was always dreaming that the brine, there's a salt, there are minerals, there's magnesium, there are chemicals, there are several products which you can probably how do you call it, retreat. And then the brine becomes some economical value and will not be so critical anymore, environmentally speaking. I don't know if Daniel has some ideas about it. It would be very interesting. Another thing is the desalination has to be done by renewable energies. I think this is quite easy. Those are two aspects, I think, which we have to take in consideration in our projects.
If I may directly. Okay, yeah, of course, Rainer, I agree that the operation of desalination plants with renewable energy is set, and that's not difficult to obtain. When it comes to brine recovery, so all the aspects of recovering certain elements, saying magnesium or sodium or chloride, they come with an energy cost. So there are minimum liquid discharge options or zero liquid discharge options, and all these options, when you want to recover certain elements from brine, you need energy, either solar energy or thermal energy. And probably in Chile and Namibia, you can do that in open ponds. But then you still need a purification step, because otherwise you just have a bulk material which is not pure enough for any use in certain industries. So the crucial part when it comes to brine mining or brine recovery is that you need to find a regional or local market for these elements you want to recover. Because otherwise you have elements or materials or salts that are probably high in amount or in sheer tonnage, but you need to transport them to probably other regions or other countries. And when it comes to transport cost, then it's another costing factor for the production of the water. And this is something what needs to be carefully evaluated if that's possible, and when it's possible, to what amount of money. So I think it's there's no general answer to that, but it needs to be evaluated on a local or even regional case.
I would invest a bit on money for research in this special point in Chile for the mining sector, because the mining sector has a demand, and the mining sector is able to manage minerals. So I think it would be easy to have a customer for the products you can get out. So I think, in my opinion, there's a lack of investment in research in this kind of what can you do with the brine to make it more environmental correct and to retrieve some the minerals you can, whatever you can retrieve with added value. I think this is still is a lack of it's a bridge.
Yeah, thank you. So I also remember that Cristina, you mentioned the strategical environmental evaluation. So, and that's like when you make an environmental impact assessment, usually that's related to one particular project. But then you can, the question is, do you also look at, for example, on a regional scale, at like different projects that are being planned and how they all together, what are their environmental impacts? So I guess when we are wondering now about the question, what is the upper limit of how much water can be used? And then, of course, I guess it's a very important factor that what Rainer mentioned, that also due to the climate change, the water that comes from the Andes, which is the melting water of the glaciers, is being reduced. So then there is a big water crisis that's always getting worse in Chile. So there is water needed, but then what do you use it for? Do you use it for exporting hydrogen, or for the mining industry, or for coal plants, or for agriculture? So I guess that's again this distribution issue. So, and with this strategical evaluation, maybe we also come back to Romain again, and to the regulations that need to be associated to water. So I wanted to just invite Romain back into the dialogue here, and maybe then Cristina, and then we can come to some of the questions of the audience. So Romain.
Yes. Of course, the issue is that when we're talking about regulation that would actually impact the consumption of water, it will be very much regional or local, actually national regulations. Well, in the EU, it will be regional because you will have the EU directives, etc. But typically, this is not something that is, as I was touching upon, integrated into criteria, sustainability criteria, for example. So it doesn't apply to other countries that would potentially export to the EU. So this is really something that has to be seen more at a national level. Well, we can always do some lobbying for an improvement of the local regulations, but this is each time the local government that will decide. And also to reflect on the debate that was ongoing, I think one of the main issue, and well, here comes a bit my interest in degrowth, etc. The issue is scale. Because indeed, as Rainer was saying, when you have hydrogen, one plant consumes way less than a typical coal mine, and usually than a mine for whatever type of extraction that you have. The issue is there indeed a planning towards 2030, 2040, 2050 of the total consumption of water at the scale of the region, for example, in Antofagasta, but also in the case of Namibia, for example, and to be sure that, okay, you want to use more water anywhere for this and this use, but prioritizing and actually closing down the other ones that are maybe not that prioritizing anymore, priority anymore, so just the coal plants, for example, because that's the idea. Because what we really see so far with the transition is a piling up of different technologies and the piling up of the different consumptions, instead of really having lower consumptions, being of energy, of water, or any type of raw materials, being replaced by new ones that are indeed cleaner. And then the piling up is leading us where we are now, with the critical situation where we are. So I don't know if there's really an integrated planning, or whether, for example, all the different plans for the different projects for desalination are just projects that are pushed up by private companies based on what they think will be the needs, but without any specific organization from a higher level.
Thank you. Cristina, would you like to comment again, or shall we pass to the questions?
Very, very shortly, the strategic environmental assessment is very important because, as you mentioned, many projects have been presented now at the same time in the same territories. Well, of course, they have their own land and areas. So the authority needs to have a broad view about the impact of all the projects together. Because of course, usually you evaluate every project individually, but for example, one desalination plant can be have services to more than one project, and that's have to need to be assessed, and also the impact that they have in together. So that is more clear, I think, in Magallanes, because there are many projects as well in the queue to start the environmental assessment system. And it's important also to evaluate not just what is in the law, but step by step, also what happened at the territorial level. That's very important.
Thank you. So now, is there anyone in the audience who would like to raise a question directly? So you can raise your hand. And we can pick you, and otherwise I would ask Benno, who offered, oh yeah, there are already 2 people in line, and after those 2 people, we come to questions that are written in the chat. So please introduce yourself briefly, and the first one I have on the list is Benedict Walker.
Yes, thank you, everyone, especially for the presentations. I'm Benedict Walker. I'm a research associate with the University of Bonn. We have a research project where we are currently collecting data on the Magallanes region. And my question is about the regulation of desalination plants in Chile. I was wondering, Cristina, you said there's basically no regulation of these plants. Does this also account for a spatial planning perspective? Are there no spatial planning instruments to coordinate the siting of these plants? Thank you.
Mentioned there is not a specific normative or regulation about desalination plants in Chile. They're based on others that exist in different countries. And so when that's happening now. And I mentioned that it's important to have a local one, including the local condition of the sea, of the, what will happen with the brine afterwards, what will be the impact locally, etc. But with local perspectives. I don't know the name in English, but the local authority for environmental impact also, they have guidelines for green hydrogen as well now. And they are working, I don't know if it's already released, but are working in something about desalination, but I think it already exists. Yeah. But again, there isn't exist a normative directive about the desalination plants made in Chile.
Thank you. Next we have Gloria Baigortegui.
Thanks for the presentations and for the opportunity to ask some things, because it's a very important theme for us in terms of the water and the green energy infrastructures. I think I wrote in the chat is in my view, I'm from the University of Santiago in Chile, and I work in terms of the society and energy themes, and I'm so interested in these conversations. In terms of history and the global north and global south infrastructures of energy, important part is the lack of research and the lack of normativity and the lack of principles to care the local aspect in Namibia and Chile. It's not a new it's not new. And I imagine that you are interested in sustainability in general and the water and so on. Maybe the question for Daniel and Rainer, for example, and Romain, who has designed this project, is to consider, for example, precautionary principle at local level too. Not only, as Cristina said, point by point, the normative aspect, or maybe to make some coalitions in favor to contain more principles of precautionary principles. When you don't have for example, researchers in local level, or you don't have the data, so on, how you can reframe your project or to make another lobbies, as the big companies are usual to make lobbies with the local governments and so on, to contain this lack of knowledge, lack of regulations, and so on. As I think it's really important for the local community to have this alliance, good alliance, ethical alliance in the business. And I suppose in Europe, the precautionary principles emerged in the 70s with the big problems and the impacts, environmental impacts in your lands. Well, this is the same as in the global south, but it's in our south is historical, the non-incorporation of the precautionary principles. That is a proposal and an ask and a question that I would like to propose on someone. Thank you very much for the interesting presentations.
Okay, I see Daniel has switched on his microphone quickly.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much for that question, Gloria. And I think that's an important topic to address in all the countries. I mentioned in my presentation the Hyphen project, and what they did was they had a roadshow to introduce their project to the people, especially down in the Ludovitz region where this plant will be built in the next years. But they went to many different Namibian cities and communities to actually talk about green hydrogen production, about the benefits and the workforce that could be brought by bringing up the green hydrogen production. So they did that by themselves, and they were strongly encouraged also by other green hydrogen projects in Namibia. And the government itself is very much concerned that the people are not forced to work with the green hydrogen, but they actually want to have the strong inclusion of the community. That's done by several of the hydrogen aspects. And within our project, there's the Institute for Socio-Ecological Research, and they made interviews with local stakeholders actually discussing what is already discussed, what is known in certain regions where the green hydrogen valleys are to be established, who is aware of what is going on. And I think that's a very important part of bringing people actually to believe in the green hydrogen, to avoid mistakes which have been done in the past, especially with the mining industry in countries. So I think, yes, thank you for addressing that.
Yeah, one question directly related to that, because I see Innocent Hayuga also in the audience today. He was a speaker yesterday. He's from Free Namibia. And one of his strong claims was that there was a big lack of information and involvement of the community in Namibia. So I'm wondering, I know that the Institute for Social Ecological Research, they are part of your project. So they are not like the government who informs the people, but they are evaluating. So what is their evaluation about participation processes and information processes of the local communities for the hydrogen projects in Namibia?
Why not asking them directly? They are here in this very chat and discussion board. So I don't know if they're still online, like Paula, Sophia, or Jonathan. Do you want to answer that question?
No answer so far.
Yeah, probably not.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. One moment.
That was a surprise attack.
Okay, I hope you can see me
Yes. Hello.
and hear me clearly.
Thank you for joining.
So just to quickly elaborate on what we're doing, we're actually conducting interviews with different stakeholders in Namibia from different sectors, like from the industry, from local and regional authorities, and from civil society organizations to identify, first of all, barriers, risks, potentials for a green hydrogen industry in Namibia. And yeah, from that we identify, or our plans to identify the needs, what actually needs to be done in order to address these social issues, these just hydrogen or just transition issues, as well as to identify potential measures that could be taken by the stakeholders in Namibia to address these issues. But yeah, our research is still ongoing at the moment. I don't know if this question was at least in part answered by this, but if you have further question, please feel free to ask.
Yeah, I think the question is also about, like, if if the involvement and the information of the population, and well, we now have to focus on water justice, if that can be assumed to be sufficient, if there's a good involvement, because yesterday the testimony that we received from our speaker was that there was a big lack of participation in that sense.
Yes, so from our interviews, from our analysis so far, I can only agree to that. So what we've heard from the stakeholders we talked to is that in Namibia, there's a lack of, let's say, comprehensive information sharing. Daniel mentioned before that, for example, the Hyphen project has conducted a roadshow, but yeah, I mean, there are critical voices being raised that this is only for public relations purposes and not really offering opportunities for discussion, for having a discourse with the population, within the local population, and so on. So, I mean, the projects themselves, they are in a way, I would say, limited. They have limited resources to deep dive into local populations or the whole population, let's say, in Namibia. But I totally agree that there must be a what was the wording yesterday? A shared responsibility together with the government, national government, regional governments, and so on, to tackle these issues and integrate and have participation platforms for the population to take part in the decision-making processes. And I think from what I heard so far and learned so far, this has insufficiently been done in Namibia, in the Namibian case.
Yes, yesterday in the introduction also, Franziska Müller explained again the several dimensions of her hydrogen justice approach that she and her group work with. And also like in the classical justice discussions, there are these three dimensions that is, and one of them is the recognitional and also the procedural justice. So, and the other one is the distributional justice. So the distributional justice, how are burdens or benefits distributed? But also recognitional is like who gets a seat at the table. And the procedural justice, like how are the procedures designed in order to get to a just outcome? And for example, what I know is in the case of indigenous peoples, for example, the ILO Convention 169 defines a free, prior, and informed consent. So there's a clear definition of categories that need to be fulfilled, which are also often sidelined or avoided in different ways or not complied with. But in the end, that's also an issue of regulations, of criteria that need to be defined by importing or by exporting countries. And there Romain comes in again. And after Romain's comment, I would invite Benno to present some questions from the chat. And then we also come to an end. Romain.
Thanks, Alexandra. Yes, you give me the opportunity to touch upon a point that I wanted to reflect since, well, for a few minutes or so, based on Gloria, what she said about the regulation, but most importantly, the application, the implementation of the regulation. Because in many of these countries, for example, Chile and other countries, you have regulations that supposedly will to an extent protect the indigenous people. In some other actually neighboring countries, it's even more entrenched into the legal framework, such as in Bolivia, where you really have a strong, well, legally and theoretically you have a really strong protection of indigenous people, but actually it's not respected at all. And I was also reading some articles recently about the situation in Chile with the environmental court that was created some 10 years ago approximately, where actually indigenous people, they just don't trust it because they consider it being into kind of the influence of the government and of the large companies, and therefore you don't have any guarantee that the legal framework, such as the International Convention, the one from the ILO, will actually be implemented. In addition, also the ILO one actually requires consent really from the local communities, which usually is not really what we can say has been granted. At best, in many cases, it's just about consultation. And this is where also, touching upon what Gloria was saying about the precautionary principle. Theoretically, if, well, you can apply the precautionary principle at two levels. Either the lawmakers nationally, regionally, or locally decide to apply it themselves by saying, okay, let's wait a bit and have a higher level of certainty about what we're going to do, or not necessarily, but then if it is if the precautionary principle is part of the law in the country, and then you have a project that is being proposed, you can, once more, in principle, you can go to the court and then look for the application of the precautionary principle with your arguments. And then it's the deliberation of the judge. But once more, here we come to the issue of whether you can actually trust the judiciary system in your country for the application of the law. And in many cases, you have great legal frameworks. It's the same in South Africa, absolutely great legal framework, including on water, for example, but the application is always the issue.
Yeah, thank you very much. So Benno, maybe you can summarize one or two questions that could be briefly answered then?
Yeah, there are two questions. One is from Lukas Hondasch and the other one is from Elisa Kochskemper, which were not touched upon yet, and both refer to the issue of desalination and the relationship to freshwater, so freshwater use and desalination. And the first question, so they're not really the same, but kind of connected. So I will just try to put them together. So the first one touches upon indicators of water stress, and to what extent this might be a criterion for a sustainability criterion in green hydrogen production. And if this criterion of water stress is exceeded, what should be the consequences for H2 production? So if there's a certain extent of water stress, is then the option to move to desalination, or are there other options? This is the first question. And the other question refers to incentives for industries to use desalinated seawater instead of fresh water, because freshwater still is cheaper, is lower at lower cost. So there are no market incentives for that. And this question also refers to the notion of mandatory standards for hydrogen production and for desalinated water in hydrogen production. So for example, in Namibia or Chile, where water stress is a huge issue. And I think maybe these questions they are not directly referred to one of the speakers, but maybe Daniel or Romain can answer best to them. But this is of course up to the speakers and up to you, Alexandra.
I see Rainer activated.
It's related to my question I have to Romain. You said desalinization is not a perfect solution. I mean, I read it in your one of the slides. What's the perfect solution for the northern Chile and for Namibia, where water desalinization is the only solution to get water? This I don't understand, because if the European community is going the sustainability criteria in such a way, then you can forget most of the planned hydrogen projects in this moment.
No, of course, it's a way to put it, well, in a few words only, but I was referring to the brine issue and the concentration of the release of the brine in one specific located region. And the idea is not necessarily to say, then let's not doing any desalination at all, because as you say, it's not only an issue of green hydrogen, it's an issue actually of access to water for people, etc., etc., etc. But it's to avoid just saying, it's okay, we have desalination, so we have a perfect solution, end of the story. Which may be, in your case, you've been more careful, but which is something that we can kind of tend to hear, but even also for other uses here in Spain, well, as said, in the south, there's huge water stress issues, which is mostly due to actually intensive farming, and you quickly have the solution of, okay, but we can just desalinize water and end of the story. So like if it was a perfect solution. So that's more to say, be careful that there is no perfect solution, basically, and therefore you need to take into account the potential impact and to include this. Now, quickly and related to that, and related to one of the questions, which was about what about the water stress indicator within the sustainability criteria? Well, actually, the private bodies that I've mentioned that are certifying the sustainability criteria, they can do pretty much whatever they want in terms of proposing higher levels of sustainability. So it's possible to have some private schemes that will propose issues related to the consumption of water. For example, in the case of bioenergy, you have some of these private schemes that integrate NGOs within their board, and usually they are more, well, they have a higher quality. But the issue is this one that I've mentioned before, the forum shopping. So as long as you will have some other schemes that will be enough to comply with the regulation, you will have an incentive for the producers to go for the lower threshold. So this is more this issue, but theoretically it could be integrated into that. And now to have a higher threshold for everyone set by the regulation at the EU level or at the national level, then it is much more difficult because of this fear of the World Trade Organization regime that would actually well, give a decision that is contrary to your opinion.
Thank you. I see Cristina has her hand raised.
Yes, I wanted to comment something shortly about the only solution of the desalination plants in the northern Chile. It's not it's more complicated than the idea that the northern Chile is very arid, it's no water. That's why the desalination plant is a good solution. It's because for a long time, for 100 years, the water that exists in the desert, in rivers, in salares, so there's salty lakes, and in subterranean water, have been drying out because of the extensive use of mining industry. So, I mean, that's why it's important to include the history here and why we have the current, conditions and also doesn't necessarily just one solution. I mean, there are many, many things that we can do at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. So unfortunately, our time has run out. So if someone has a final statement, a very short one, I would invite you to do so. And otherwise, I think what has become clear is that there are still many open questions that need to be further discussed. And there are the water discussion in the hydrogen area and about desalination and its impacts, I feel is now developing more. It's going to arrive in regulations in Chile, in the European Union. And I think it's an important discussion to be had. And if there are no more, no one takes the word now. I would then close by thanking you very much for being part of this panel hopefully hoping for further exchange in the future. And then we will pass on, I see Rainer already there, to our closing of the conference. So thank you very much.